a bereaved mum has come together with a charity to try to put an end to women becoming victims of honour-based abuse.
Yeah, Fawziyah Javed believes shame and stigma contributed to her daughter's death at the hands of her controlling husband.
Well, we're now joined by Fawziyah's mum, Fawziyah Javed, and Natasha Ratu from the charity Karma Nirvana, which is launching a campaign to redefine honour-based abuse and to have it as a statutory definition to make a difference. Good morning to both of you. Thank you so much for coming in. Yasmin, you know, I'm so sorry for everything that you've been through. Just what a harrowing situation you and your family have had. And there, we saw part of the documentary which has gone out recently, The Push on Channel 4. I mean, you know, I was watching it and it is so powerful, so emotional. How was it for you being a part of that and obviously bringing Fawziyah's story to a wider audience?
Well, obviously, very deeply grieved and in a lot of pain. It was very, very difficult, but at the same time, it was very important for people to know what Fawziyah went through and to expose the murderer and the multiple perpetrators that were involved, and hopefully the documentary would just show what she went through and stop it happening to somebody else.
Yeah, so there was one person convicted here, Kashif Anwar.
That's right.
Fawziyah's husband, who was convicted of killing her in that incident at Arthur's Seat in Edinburgh. But you say that you believe there's an honour-based element to what happened.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there were others that were complicit in what was happening, that were part of the abuse, that were allowing it to happen. I don't know if you saw the snippet where the father gives the interview in court. What you saw was just an inch of what Fawziyah was being exposed to. Not just Fawziyah, myself and my husband.
At what point, Yasmin, in the marriage, I mean, you was only married eight months, at what point did you realise that this isn't going to be the happy marriage that you wanted your daughter to have, or any mother would want for their daughter?
Within a couple of months, I could tell that Fawziyah wasn't her normal self. She was always a very bubbly, very happy girl, always a smile on her face. And although she was like that, I could tell there was something not right. And slowly she started telling me about some of the abuse, although I know she was holding it back. She would always start off with, look, now I don't want you to worry. And she'd start telling me a few things.
Now, you know, I'm from the same community as you know, and I hear this all the time from lots of families. I think every one of our families has probably got incidents like this to some varying degree. What is it about those situations that someone like Fawziyah can't just walk out the front door and just go, that's it, I'm done with this, I'm going to go back to my mum, I'm going to go there. There's something, isn't there? There's something that prevents women of being able to just do that.
In Fawziyah's instance, it was a case of Fawziyah had the full support of her parents to come back, and she wanted to come back. So when Fawziyah reported the abuse to the police the first time, the police acknowledged the abuse, and Fawziyah also reported the fact that he had stolen £12,000 from her bank account. And they actually said to her, look, we believe you. He's going to turn around and say you gifted this money to him. So Fawziyah had to go back to try and persuade him and his parents to give the money back, because the parents had even said to Fawziyah, don't tell your parents about it.
And there's one bit, isn't there, in the documentary where there's a phone conversation between them, and she's staying with you at the time. And he's saying, you have to come back home. Stop acting like a man.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm telling you, as your husband, you have to come back home.
That's right.
Natasha, you're CEO of Karma Nirvana, a charity that looks after lots of these cases, from, you know, Yasmin and Fawziyah's situation. Now, we have to completely clarify, only one person was implicated in this particular case, but you're saying that there needs to be a change in the legal system to recognise the influence families can make in these types of cases.
Yes, so we're calling on the government to introduce a legal definition for honour-based abuse, because despite Karma Nirvana being around for 30 years and dealing with thousands of cases of people impacted by honour-based abuse, we still don't have one universal legal definition. And this is really problematic because professionals that have duties to protect and safeguard don't always recognise honour-based abuse when it takes place. But also a real common feature in honour-based abuse is the multiple perpetrator element, this familial complicity. And without having a legal definition, we don't recognise those perpetrators too. So it's really fundamental that we have a legal definition. It's a very simple thing that the government can do, but will have a massive, far-reaching impact.
So it'd be looking at the case as a whole and what had happened. How difficult is it, though, or would it be to prove something like that?
Well, I think the legal definition is a starting point because people then have a context to which these types of abuses take place, so are more likely to recognise it. Because, you know, we know from the documentary that when the perpetrator, who was convicted, pushed Fawziyah off the cliff, he didn't dial 999. He rang his father, and we see elements, classic elements of honour-based abuse. So a legal definition would enable a professional to recognise it in its context. And Karma Nirvana received a call from Yasmin prior to Fawziyah's death, and there's lots of information that's not in the public domain, but very obvious that there was a very clear honour dynamic.
You know, these are really difficult conversations to have for obvious reasons, but there is the other conversation we've had about culture. Now, you know, I could probably ask you this, we're both from the same, you know, Asian culture. Are there cultural issues within our communities that need to be addressed that perhaps don't exist anywhere else, or are you seeing them across all of society?
I mean, we're seeing that in the UK there are 2 women that die every week at the hands of domestic abuse. And we know that in the vast majority of those cases they're killed by a partner or an ex-partner. And the vast majority of people have had contact with a public body like police. So we know that this is a widespread problem across all cultures and communities, but what we're not seeing is the action to address it. After every domestic homicide that takes place, there is a review, there are recommendations that are made, but sadly we're not seeing those recommendations come into action. And by not putting them into action, we're letting women and girls down.
It's an important conversation to have. And Yasmin, you know, throughout all of this, obviously, Fawziyah is at the heart of this, and I was struck watching the documentary, you know, as you were mentioning there, how joyful she was, how full of life she was. Talk to us about her, because, you know, I know that you feel her loss so very deeply. She was so special to you.
Yeah, she was.
I'm sorry.
She was an incredibly amazing young girl. She was our life, our world, our heartbeat. She was a humanitarian who wore her heart on her sleeve, and she would do anything for anybody. You know, she would... I've been approached by people who only ever met her the once, and they said that she made an impact on them. She was just an amazing young woman.
Can I just say, she would be so proud of you being here today to talk about this, to talk about her story, and to want to spread this message that you are doing to make a difference and to have your say and to be there to share the message calling for recognition of honour-based abuse.
Yes.
Thank you so much for coming in to talk to us today. Thank you as well to you, Natasha.
Thank you, Yasmin, and thank you very much, Natasha.
We should just say, actually, if you've been affected by any of the issues we've been discussing, you can find advice and support at itv.com/helplines.